Thank you very much, Solina. Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. We are very happy that you could join us this morning for this important briefing on the developments in the SDG 2. Well, as you all know, many of the countries of the ACP, agriculture is the backbone of the economy, and without agricultural transformation, it will be very difficult to achieve sustainable development. So as earlier said, SDG 2 on zero hunger and sustainable development and sustainable agriculture is very critical, in terms of achieving the other SDGs. Of course, when you talk about SDG 2, people mostly think of zero hunger and nutrition targets, but overall, SDG 2 has 8 targets, and a lot of them are around sustainable agriculture. So in addition to ending hunger and ensuring access to safe and nutritious, sufficient food for everyone, and also meeting nutrition targets, especially around stunting, wasting, and obesity and all that. There are specific sustainable agriculture targets in terms of doubling agricultural productivity and income for smallholder producers, ensuring sustainable food production systems, and resilient agriculture, especially in the face of climate change, maintaining genetic diversity, increasing investment in agriculture extension, rural advisory services, technology development, and so on, in terms of correcting and preventing trade restrictions and distortions, and also finally ensuring proper functioning of the food commodity market. So there are a number of targets that are not usually talked about, which are really critical in terms of achieving SDG 2. Well, as we heard before, unfortunately, the targets, most of these targets are not being made, especially the big target of decreasing hunger. As you know, in the last 3 years, as we heard from the State of Food Security and Nutrition from the latest report, the number of hungry people is actually increasing due to a number of reasons, particularly climate change and conflict. So the number now stands at 821 million people from around 777 million a couple of years ago. So it's not very encouraging. And in terms of the nutrition targets also, obesity and stunting and wasting and all that, again, the targets are moving fairly slowly. Of course, climate extremes are also exacerbating the problem, so the whole challenge of climate change is also there, especially as it relates to agriculture food security, is very much within SDG 2. So if you look at the case of Africa, of course, there is a major initiative known as the Malabo Declaration, as you probably know. The target date is 2025, but it's very much aligned to SDG 2 as well. So last year, the heads of state and African Union launched the African Agricultural Transformation Scorecard to look at the progress in terms of achieving the Malabo Declaration targets. We're hoping to have somebody from the African Union join us and present the results of the scorecard, but unfortunately they are not able to join us. But that makes a very strong contribution in terms of tracking the SDG 2s in addition to tracking the Malabo Declaration. Of course, it's tracking around 7 targets in terms of what the African heads of state agreed to achieve accelerated agricultural growth and transformation, and for shared prosperity and improved livelihoods. And the 7 targets, one is to recommit to the principles of the CAADP, the Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program that was agreed in 2003. For example, in terms of committing 10% of the national budget to agricultural development, maintaining 6% growth in the agricultural sector, annual growth, and so on and so forth, ending hunger by 2025, reducing poverty by half through inclusive agricultural growth and transformation, boosting intra-African regional trade, especially in agricultural commodities and services, enhancing resilience to climate change, and finally, having mutual accountability and results. So as part of this accountability and results process, they did the first ever biennial review last year. So basically, out of the 55 countries, 47 countries responded to the biennial review report. And out of the 47 countries, only 20 are on target to meet the Malabo Declaration. So that's still quite a long ways to go. And in terms of regional achievements, it's only Eastern and Southern Africa that are fairly on target. So they came up to a score of 3.9 out of 10 to be able to qualify as meeting the targets by 2025. So there are still quite a large number of countries. And of course, when you look into the details, you will see that not all the targets are being made. So there are, especially as it relates to cutting down hunger, I think still a number of countries are struggling in terms of meeting those targets. So through this process, the African Union not only were able to see what the record is like, but also to identify specific targets, challenges, and what to do about those challenges. So overall, I think this is a very important development, at least within the context of Africa, to see how the continent is performing in terms of not just Malabo, but also achieving SDGs. So overall, I think what we say is if we really have to achieve agricultural transformation, of course, there are issues of improving productivity, connecting smallholders to markets, diversification of products and incomes. We need to build the producers' knowledge and develop their capacities. Food harvest loss is a big element that has to be addressed. So there are quite a number of issues and challenges that we have to look at, including finance. So some of them we'll be discussing today. And from, of course, CTA's perspective, of course, all of our activities very much are within the framework of the SDG 2. So we have, in our latest strategic framework, we have made very clear how our work contributes directly to the SDG 2. And especially in the discussions that we're having today, we do a lot of work around data, really digitalization, helping different stakeholders to be able to contribute to the data collection, farmers' organizations, youth groups, and others. It's not just the official statistical data, but we also have to look at what are the other sources of data that would help us to capture what's happening in terms of meeting the various SDG targets. So we contribute a lot in terms of our work around the Global Open Data for Agriculture and Nutrition Initiative, GODAN, where we try to help different ACP organizations to make their data openly accessible. And we also work specifically with the African Union to try and bring in, especially the food safety data. We just launched recently a project on African Food Safety Index, where we try to work with the African Union to build capacity of the member states to be able to provide data around food safety, which is a very key element of, as you know, both nutrition and food security. So there are a number of activities which we can provide more details for those of you who are interested. So with that, we look forward for a lively discussion this morning, and we thank again for the speakers who have been able to join us today. So thank you.